Uber wasn't originally called Uber. For its first year and a half, it was called UberCab, a play on the German word über, meaning above or over the top, meant to signal a premium, above-the-rest car service. But in October 2010, San Francisco regulators hit the young company with a cease and desist letter, arguing that a startup with no taxi license had no business calling itself a cab company. Within about 24 hours, the founders dropped the word cab entirely, and Uber, the company we know today, was born almost by accident, out of a legal threat rather than a branding meeting. That's the short answer. But the full story, how a $800 New Year's Eve town car bill in Paris turned into a word that would eventually mean, get me a car in dozens of languages, is a lot more interesting. Let's get into it. It's late 2008. Two American entrepreneurs are in Paris for the Web Tech Conference. Garrett Camp, a Canadian software engineer who just sold his company StumbleUpon to eBay, and Travis Kalanick, who'd recently sold his file-sharing startup Red Swoosh to Akamai for $19 million. Both men had cash, both had time on their hands, and both were doing what unemployed but wealthy tech founders do best: staying up until 5 a.m. brainstorming the next big idea. Camp had a recurring problem. He couldn't reliably get a cab in San Francisco, and on a snowy night in Paris, he'd struggled again. Compounding that, the two of them had blown roughly $800 hiring a private driver on New Year's Eve just to get around, an amount that stuck with them as absurd. So Camp started sketching out an idea. What if you could push a button on your phone and a black car would just show up? No dispatcher, no hailing, no haggling. Just tap, and a ride appears. He called the concept UberCab. This is the part most explainer videos skip. Uber isn't a made-up name like Rolex or Häagen-Dazs. It's a real German word. Uber translates literally to over or above. But in casual English usage, it had already been borrowed as slang for something extreme or superior. Uber cool, uber successful. Think of it the way super gets tacked onto words for emphasis. For a black car service positioning itself as a step above a regular taxi, it fit. The name wasn't about the technology, it was about the promise. This isn't just a cab, it's the cab above all cabs. Premium, elevated, literally over the competition. So UberCab was the full package. Uber signaled premium quality, and Cab told you exactly what the product was: a way to summon a car. Camp began building the prototype with two friends, Oscar Salazar and Conrad Whalen, while Kalanick, still finishing up other ventures, hovered as an informal advisor. By early 2010, UberCab launched in San Francisco with a small fleet of blacktown cars. It worked. It worked really well, which, it turns out, was the problem. By the fall of 2010, UberCab had built enough of a following in San Francisco that it started showing up on the radar of two government bodies: the San Francisco Metro Transit Authority and the California Public Utilities Commission. On October 20th, 2010, the Public Utilities Commission sent a formal notice ordering UberCab to cease and desist, to immediately stop all advertising and operations as a for-hire passenger carrier without proper authorization. The city's transit agency piled on with a similar letter days later. The threat wasn't abstract either. The notice cited fines of up to $1,000 and potential jail time for continued violations. The core argument from regulators was simple. UberCab functioned like a cab company, collecting fares, dispatching cars, operating on demand, but it didn't hold a taxi license, and its insurance didn't match what licensed cabs were required to carry. In the eyes of the city, the name itself was part of the problem. Calling yourself UberCab while dodging taxi regulation was, to regulators, false advertising. CEO Ryan Graves told the press at the time that the company was working with the agencies to sort out their concerns. But behind the scenes, the fix was much faster and much simpler than any legal battle. Change the name. Within roughly a day of the news breaking, the company's website and logo had already shifted, quietly dropping cab and just reading Uber. The company posted to its own community with a tongue-in-cheek line, "More Uber than cab." It wasn't a rebrand born out of a marketing strategy session. It was a company distancing itself in real time from a word, cab, that had just become a legal liability. Here's the twist. Dropping the word cab ended up being a stroke of luck the founders never planned for. UberCab tied the company to one specific product: hired black cars. Uber tied the company to nothing but a feeling: elevated, effortless, above the ordinary. That ambiguity turned out to be exactly what a company planning to expand into ride-hailing, then food delivery, then freight, then package delivery actually needed. You can't build Uber Eats under a name that has the word cab baked into it. The forced rebrand also happened to strip the name down to something short, punchy, and internationally pronounceable. A single, memorable syllable and a half that worked in English, German, French, and dozens of other markets Uber would later expand into. By the time Uber went public on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker Uber, operating in over 70 countries and more than 10,000 cities, the word Uber had become so tied to the act of hailing a ride that people used it as a verb. I'll just Uber there, regardless of which app they actually opened. A name meant to signal better than a taxi ended up meaning something bigger. On demand, at your fingertips, whatever the service. And it happened not because of some genius branding session, but because a city agency didn't like the word cab. So next time you order a ride and glance at that black and white app icon, remember, it was never supposed to be called just Uber. It took a cease and desist letter to strip away the one word that would have locked the company into being just another cab service, and leave behind the one word broad enough to become a global verb. If you enjoyed discovering the story behind Uber's name, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Which famous brand should we uncover next?